Hey everyone, Justin here for S&S Archery. In today's gear video, we are out here sighting in the new UV slider from UltraView. Today we're going to cover your basic setup. We're going to get into all the adjustments that can be made, and then we'll also help you in selecting the right sight tapes. All right guys, getting started in today's gear video. We are out here sighting in the UV slider. Finally got a break in the weather so we can do this video for you guys. But today we're basically going to cover your basic setup. We'll get into the axis adjustments just a little bit. Primarily we're going to be looking at your windage, your elevation adjustments, and then ultimately helping you out in selecting the right sight tapes. So we'll go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is set our scope housing relative to our peep. So this is important to do right at the start because it's going to affect your pin gaps later on. So what we're looking for is a consistent view of our scope housing through our peep. So here I have the bridge lock model inside my phase 4. I'm able to slide the dovetail in or out. If you have the side mount, same thing, you can adjust it in or out. If you have the Picatinny mount, it is fixed. So if you're too far off, you can't quite get the right ring to line up with your peep, then you're gonna probably have to change your peep size. So mine is already set up. That moves us to step 2, our axis adjustments. Very important. We're not gonna really get into it on this video because it's a whole video in itself. I'll go ahead and put a link right here so you guys can check that out. Very easy to set up, just like all the other sights on the market these days. So that leads us to the main, or I guess our first step in the sight in process. Basically with the 3-pin hunting kit, we need to get our middle pin shooting 20 yards. Now there is no official start point on the rail that indicates where you should start. Because this is a longer rail system, I'm just going to anticipate and guess about 3/4 towards the top. Now, instead of shooting 20 yards, I recommend shooting 7 or 8 yards. Just 1-2 arrows. You're going to know right away if you're way off. Hopefully we're close enough, and then if we are, we can make a slight adjustment and then move back 20 yards and then actually get that pin sighted in. So let me roll it about right there. Step up to 7 or 8 yards and go ahead and shoot a couple arrows. Remember now, middle pin. Okay, about 2.5 inches right, inch and a half high. So I'm confident there that I'm not going to miss the target at 20 yards. So we'll go ahead and move back. Then we're going to really dial in that pin. So I haven't touched the dial from that 7 or 8 yard shot. Just gonna see where it hits. So I'm high and right. So as you move back, those distances just grow. So that's why we want to start at 7 or 8 yards. So I can go ahead and make an elevation adjustment. I'm going to dial it up, shoot another arrow. So better, come down just a hair more. And right there. All right, so we've shot one group at 20 yards. We've made some elevation adjustments. Now I'm really just trying to dial it in, making sure that all of them hit on that horizontal line. So still right. If I shoot one more in the same spot, we'll go ahead and make a windage adjustment. All right, so we are good on the elevation. We just need to make a windage adjustment now. So to make a windage adjustment on the UV slider, we have this lock knob. We're just gonna pull it out. Now I'm shooting to the right. I need to move the scope housing over to the right as well. We're just gonna bring that over. Take a guess and lock it back down. Go ahead and shoot a couple more arrows. All right, so that is good for my 20 yard pin, my fixed pin in the housing. The next step of the sight-in process is we need to set up our calibration tapes on our window indicator. Now with the UV slider, you have two. You have one here on the inside, which has the triple indicators. Then you also on the back have another one. So to make this simple, this indicator here corresponds to the yellow indicator for the fixed pin in the housing. So I'm going to go ahead and use the one on the side. I can leave it on in all times if I want. Instead of messing with the indicator side, I'm just going to use the outside for the calibration tape. So we'll go ahead and put that on. So to make this easy, I'm just going to remove these little metal aluminum bars. Just be careful of the set screws, they're very small. Just gonna slide that bar off. On your sight tapes, you're gonna see right-handed, and then use middle fixed pin when using the setup tape. So we're just gonna peel this off. And we're gonna lay it right on the bar. Now we can install it on the sight. Just gonna lay it on there. We're looking to line up that indicator with the 20-yard mark. So figure out what screw holes are gonna work the best. So I'll just start the top one. Just keep it loose. Put on the bottom screw. And we'll go ahead and line that up right on the 20-yard mark. And then lock it down. All right, so we have our calibration tape set up on the outside window indicator. Now remember, you can use the other side. I just chose to keep it on the outside. It's very simple, and I can leave it on at all times. This indicator pointing at 20 yards, this is our default position. So if I move the dial down, up, if I want to get back to that 20 yards, that middle pin being sighted in, I just moved the 20-yard mark. So what we need to do now is we need to bump out to 60 yards and shoot, and then figure out what sight tape we are. So if you have a very small target, you don't feel comfortable with just guessing, slowly work your way back, maybe 40, 50, then 60. I've shot this enough. I'm just going to take a rough guess, dial out, shoot 60 yards, fine tune my elevation until I get a good group. Basically, I'm going to guess somewhere in this ballpark. Go ahead and take a shot here at 60. So to make this a little easier on myself, I added a blue dot just above the target because the pin is yellow. It's a lot easier to see. We're looking for a very consistent elevation group here, as this will really set our correct sight tape. Now again, middle pin. All right, so we shot 60 yards. We got our elevation set. We see it on our indicator, what sight tapes we're gonna need. These are very small numbers, so what I suggest is use your phone, get really close, take a photo, and then go back in and you can zoom in and actually see what sight tape you are. So 20, 21, 22, I'm gonna say 22 is the sight tape number that I'm gonna need. Okay, so going on your right-handed tapes, 21 through 40, number 22. Go ahead and peel that off. I'm gonna grab the sight tape bar, and once again, lay that tape right on the bar. Okay, before we install the sight bar onto the sight, we need to take off the pin cartridge out of the housing. We're going to pull that out, grab our housing with the pins and line up that fixed middle pin at 30 yards. And then we can go ahead and cheat down the top pin to 20. And move up the bottom pin to 40. And this is going to roughly give us our distances. We'll definitely want to go back and check them, but this will be pretty close when we move on to those steps. So 20 is lined up, 30 good, and 40 good. Now that we have our pin gaps roughly set, we can go ahead and put the housing back in, tighten it up. Next, remove the bottom screw on the window indicator and the top screw. And we're going to drop in our sight tape, slide it to where the middle indicator, the yellow, is on 60 yards because that's the last place we shot. See where you're going to need to put the screw in. So here on the bottom. And lock it down. All right, so we have our sight tape installed on the UV slider. Now it is positioned at 60 yards, and to check just to make sure that the sight tape is in the correct position, loosen the lock lever, dial back to 20 yards on the calibration tape, lock it down, look on the back side, and that yellow indicator for the middle pin is going to be at 20 yards. So we know we are correct. The next part of this is we need to sight in the remaining pins, so the 20-yard top pin and the bottom 40-yard pin. Now this can vary depending on where you want the default position to start from. So for me, I'm going to do 20, 30, 40. Some guys might want to do, 25, 35, 45. At this point is where you're going to basically set your default position. Then you would sight in those top and bottom pins. So here I want it to be 30 yards, that middle pin. So I dial down, lock it in, move up to 20 yards and shoot. If I need to make an adjustment, I don't touch the dial. I do all the pin adjustment on the inside of the pin cartridge. So we'll go shoot 20, re-verify. If I need to make an adjustment, I will. Then we'll do the same at 40. Okay, so 20 yards, top pin. And it's right there. Shoot one more just to make sure. And we are good. So we can move back to 40 yards, shoot that pin, and then if we need to make an adjustment, we will. All right, so same thing. We're going to use our bottom pin now, shoot at 40 yards. So like I said, at this point, if you're off shooting, high, move that pin up just a little bit. But for me, it worked out by placing those pins on the sight tape and lining them up. Alrighty. Now that our 20 and our 40-yard pin are sighted in, we just need to move our indicators to line up with the sight tape. So we're just going to take that top screw, break it loose, line it up with 20. The bottom, move it up to 40. And we are set up. And the last thing we'll talk about today is the bonus pin that's on the bottom of the 3-pin hunting kit, just above the bubble level. There is no indicator for that pin, so it's based off of your bow speed. Basically, to find out where that pin actually shoots at what distance, I'm going to start about 50 yards, just keep stepping back until my elevation comes up to center. That's a pin that I would definitely use for 3Ds, just those fun shots, 120, 140 yard shots, no more. You shooting off the top of the bubble. In a hunting situation, because it's so low in the housing, it'd be very tough to center up every time, but it is cool that you have that bonus or that fun pin to shoot out. All right, that wraps up the sight-in process on the UV slider. Honestly, it's been one of the funnest sights to go through the whole process. Very precise sight tapes, the triple indicators. I like the fact that they correspond to the pin colors. It just makes it very fast for your brain to process what pin you're on just by looking at your indicators. One thing I'll mention is you definitely want to go back and check everything. So shoot a bunch of different distances. Go through all your pins, your top pin, your middle pin, your bottom pin at those different distances. If you do see any discrepancy, maybe the further you get out, you may just have to bump up a sight tape, just to add a little bit more speed. So this is going to get you close, and hopefully you guys followed along. It wasn't too painful. If you guys have any more questions on the UV slider or anything else that we've done in the past, please feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email. We'd be glad to help, and thanks for watching.